Good morning, everyone. Thanks ever so much for coming. As Joe pointed out, my name is Chris Hayman. I look after UK public sector at AWS. I did have a deck on why and how cities are so important, but that was number 5 of Joe's don't do's, so I'm going to busily fix that. No, what I'm going to talk about just very briefly today is kind of Amazon's or AWS's view around how we think about collaborative cities, how we think about smart cities, and some of the kind of the building blocks and tools which a lot of our kind of city partners are using as part of their journey towards the cloud and so on. And happy to take any questions a bit later on as well. I think it's fair to say that I'll skip over the intro there, but I think one of the things we're seeing in terms of AWS is that cloud essentially is becoming the new normal. And what I mean by that is that it's becoming the default operating environment for developers to create new services, create new applications. And the reason being is that fundamentally they can innovate, they can try things, and they're only paying for what they use. And this is especially true, I think, in the smart city space, where you can create new greenfield applications for your citizens or for internal use or transportation or whatever it may be. And if it doesn't work, you haven't spent millions of pounds building out a large infrastructure. You're only paying for what you use. And that's Joe's point number 5, create the underlying infrastructure. Well, again, you don't need to spend millions of pounds doing it. You can just try something, and if it doesn't work, then you can fail fast and do something different. This, I guess, is kind of how we see, or what some of the components of what makes a collaborative city or a smart city. And it really boils down, I think, to 3 things, and that is open data sets, sensors, and also data analytics. And I'm going to talk about each one of those in turn. Open data sets, I think, is really important, and I think we're seeing more and more cities explore their data and provide it out to the community in order that they can generate business insights. And a great example of that, we've got some examples up here, but you'll hear from Rakesh from TfL a bit later on about their open data platform. I think that's really interesting because fundamentally they don't develop applications. They have some, they effectively crowdsource those applications. There's some 500 applications out there now that exploit the travel information, the bus information, these sort of things. And that's all based on their APIs. They've done a really interesting API recently, which is around cyclist injuries and cyclist fatalities. So, understanding all the way back, specific hotspots on roads where there were cyclist problems. And I think, this comes into my point a bit later on around analytics and creating business insights from that data. And, well, actually, how can we reroute HGVs such that we don't injure cyclists in the future, and it's obviously their number 1 priority moving forward. So open data, I think, is really interesting, really important. AWS is doing a bunch of stuff. I can't see the text there, but an example of this is where we've committed to storing a petabyte of Landsat data on AWS. And fundamentally, we think that data has gravity. So if we provide this data for free at the point of use, then researchers and community members and citizens can come in and use that data and do really cool and interesting things with it. So we'll continue to develop public datasets program. If you've got any public datasets yourself and you're a public sector organisation, then feel free to grab us to see whether it will fit as part of this program. Citizen data, of course, is very, very important, especially as devices are just so pervasive now in everything we do, whether that be mobile phones or tablets or whether it be social media. I don't know if you've seen this example in Boston where they use the phone's accelerometer to track potholes in roads. That's just one very accessible use of mobile devices to gain insight for that local authority or that city. Sensor data, again, is something, I don't know if you've seen the hype cycle for sensor data, but fundamentally it's on the increase. What we're saying is that Gartner predicts there's going to be some 75 billion, almost 100 billion devices by 2020, and that's because the cost of connectivity of these devices is becoming lower and lower. and they're just becoming pervasive in everything we do in terms of the built infrastructure and the network. An example of where we're doing some work in this space is with Peterborough City Council. Actually, the journey with Peterborough started because they wanted to move a lot of their line of business applications into the cloud, their ERP systems and so on. But actually, as they started using more and more tools within the AWS ecosystem, they started realizing ways in which they can help citizens and so on. And one of those things was they deployed weather stations in schools across the city. And the idea behind that was that originally was that school children got to understand about weather, what it meant, what pollution meant and so on. But actually what they ended up creating was a data lake, and they used our Lambda service to feed sensor data into the cloud. And what they've got now is holistic information about weather across the city, and they can start understanding, as an example, whether schools being by the side of roads has an effect on learning, teaching and learning outcomes, which I think is really, really interesting. And they don't manage any infrastructure. It's using our serverless architecture, so just goes into the data lake and you can make really interesting analysis from it. We have an IoT platform. I won't, this part of the technology, but a lot of what we try and do at AWS is take away the heavy lifting away from customers, and this is a good example of this. So this is basically, managing all the device registries, it's managing the workflow associated with IoT. It's doing all these sort of things such that the citizens, the developers, and the businesses can focus on the core mission. They don't have to rewrite all that stuff. They can just pay as you go and concentrate on what they're really trying to achieve, what the outcomes that they're really trying to achieve on behalf of the city and their citizens. The last pillar is analytics. I don't know if you've seen this picture. This is, I've completely forgotten the date. I was chatting with Matt earlier about what the date could be. I'm going to say 1946. But this is people on London Underground sifting through 4 million London Underground tickets to see what the least commonly used route is. Which is just kind of, in this day and age, is kind of mind-blowing, really, to think, actually, we have so many tools out there that can do this stuff at a push of a button. And I'm not going to go through into all the technology. And what I would say, though, is that it's not one tool to rule them all. And we've got a huge team of people who can help you understand what some of the things are that will be really useful, whether it's data warehousing, whether it's machine learning, you name it, whether it's NoSQL. We've got platforms and tools available for all of them. And also, I don't know why it's coming out black, but we've also just published a reference architecture as well around what a data lake may look like as well, which I think is another interesting element. And it's really, I guess, how we can work with cities to look at the data they've got already, and how much of it is open data, how much of it is community-specific data, what are some of the controls around those various different data silos may look like, and then some of what are the outcomes that they're looking to achieve from that data, what some of the business insights. And I think some of this stuff is going to be really, really interesting moving forward, and we'd love to help any cities or local authorities in this space. Putting it all together, I mean, fundamentally, what we're trying to help with is the data sources, whether smart devices, they're citizen data or public data sets, processing it, and then outputting it, and then creating some sort of visualization or business insights off the back of it. I recently did a demo in a central government department, shall we say. I downloaded some police crime data from gov.uk, it's all open data. I put it in our data warehousing service, and I put Tableau kind of visualization on it. And you can very quickly see police crime hotspots across the UK. I think it took me about an hour and a half, and my AWS bill was $35. And kind of everyone in the central government department were fairly stunned because they've spent a huge amount doing these sort of things. So what I'm trying to say, I guess, is that have a think about some of the workloads in which you can experiment and you can try things. To Joe's point, it's just doing something, experimenting, and either through serendipity or through strategic decisions, amazing things can happen. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much.